So Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon. It's a very intimidating name, isn't it? Farmageddon kind of sounds like is the farm gonna explode under attack from aliens? That's what's gonna happen here. It's like no. It's Shaun the Sheep. Another stop motion animated film from Aardman Studios, who always put a lot of love and craft and care into their claymation features. This is the second film with Shaun the Sheep, and I was really warmed over by the first Shaun the Sheep movie. It was like a fairly simple premise. It's a bunch of sheep on a farm. They get into mischief. They lose their farmer, and they got to get their farmer back from the big city. Antics ensue. Fairly simple story, and the fact that there really isn't any discernible dialogue is pretty. It's all right, but what really makes it work is the animation. There's a lot of really clever visual gags. There's a lot of great emotion that comes through the screen. Just a lot of great craft that Aardman usually has, and I've always loved that aspect of Aardman is that they always have like this great sense of care within their animation to always make something just a little bit more clever, just a little bit more unique, and just put everything they have into a film. And Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon is it's no different in terms of like their animation. They definitely did put a lot of work in here. There's some great slapstick. But the thing is, and this isn't me trying to saying that I didn't like the film. It's just in comparison to the last film, Farmageddon feels kind of par for the course. It feels like a story that's maybe just a little bit too simple for Shaun. So the premise is a fairly simple one. An alien crash lands in Mossingham, the small farming community where Shaun and the other sheep graze. And there's one alien who comes out of the ship by the name of Lula, who kind of looks like a cross between a bunny and a octopus. I don't know. It's an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different creatures, but essentially we learn that Lula can manipulate. Lula can manipulate her. I was gonna say his or her. I'm not sure if Lula is a boy or a girl, or if it even has a gender. But whatever. Lula's voice can manipulate to any other voice that she comes into contact with, and she can make other crazy sounds with her mouth. She also has telepathic powers. She can make stuff just levitate with her mind. So all kinds of fun stuff she can do. I don't. Like I said, I'm not even trying to address Lula. They never say who it is. Okay. I'm seeing here on the notes here that it is a woman. Okay, I was wondering because it's didn't seem as apparent to me. But okay, so Lula is essentially, we learn that Lula is an alien child, and she's looking for her parents because she mistakenly got on a spaceship and she crash landed on Earth and trying to find her way back to her family. So naturally, Shaun will try to help her get back to her parents, but there's also, Shaun has to deal with the farm, which basically has, a guard dog who is always suspicious of Shaun, knows that he's getting into trouble, keeps a close eye on him, and there's also a secret agent from, kind of like an X-Files style agent trying to track down this alien and capture it. So fairly simple setup here. And there are even a few simple gags that are kind of not so much expected from Aardman, but that I'd expect from any other animation studio. In particular, there's a sequence where they go into a grocery store. Lula just wanders into a grocery store. Shaun is trying to save her, but she gets into all the candy, she gets into all the soda, and she just bounces off the walls. She just goes crazy and she just runs amok. It's a clever amok. It's a fairly clever sequence, though. I mean, the slapstick that does get involved does have some cute stuff to it. In particular, I love the staging, especially when a frozen pizza cuts off part of a woman's high hair, and it reveals a 50% off sign behind her. Just great little details like that, which I think really, really work and make Aardman set themselves apart as it's not just having great heart and character, but also having a very witty commitment to visual gags as well. Especially within, like, the format of Shaun the Sheep. It's got barely any dialogue, so you have to rely on great gags and great visuals, and Aardman never disappoints in that department, and they don't here either. But yeah, it's like the gags are still great. Like, they still have that wonderful Aardman charm where there's an absurdity to everything. There's a lot of great parodies within it. In particular, there's lots of sci-fi parodies here. Some of them are really clever. Like, in particular, at one point Lula starts looking at all the other sheep, and she ends up getting into the wool of one of the bigger sheep and just like kind of finding her way inside. And the way they stage it is that the Lula's rumbling around, similar to the xenomorph from Ridley Scott's Alien that would burst out of the chest. Except here, Lula bursts out of the chest, not out of the chest, but out of the wool, and it's treated as kind of silly and comical and goofy, as opposed to horrific from Ridley Scott's Alien. So like a lot of like younger kids can watch this and go like, oh, that's really funny and cute. While the adults will be thinking, oh man, that reminds me of John Hurt getting the alien coming out of his chest. And there were a whole bunch of other great little gags in there too. Like at one point, they hitch a ride in a dumpster, and a dumpster goes across like a moon that looks akin to like E.T. And then there are a few gags that are kind of a little bit more blatant. Like at one point, the password to get into the to kind of like the X-Files style organization is literally the X-Files tune. So it's kind of like, okay, all right, that's a fairly easy gag. So like that's really only my big problem with Farmageddon, is that it's got a lot of great gags, but it's also got a few that you would kind of expect from this type of format with this type of story. And I'm only saying this in comparison to the first Shaun the Sheep movie, which was just like brilliant. It was fairly simple here. It was fairly simple in that film. With Farmageddon, it's still a little bit simple, but also follows a fairly familiar formula. Like there's not really like any like huge twist to it, but it still has great heart. It still has great charm. I like the fact that even the villains here still have some genuine charm to them, and a loving sensation where it's not just a matter of defeating the villain. It's trying to find, it's trying to just make peace and make sure that everyone gets back to the people they love. Making sure that Lula gets home to her alien family. It's there's really not too much to say other than just like the great visual staging of it. Aardman's claymation here is unparalleled. They put a lot of love and craft into this picture, and it's absolutely adorable and funny, and it's easy enough to for like younger kids. Younger kids are really gonna love Shaun the Sheep because there's really no dialogue. I mean, there's like babbled and mumbled and kind of like simple gestures of dialogue here and there that a lot of like younger kids can easily follow along with the story, as well as a little bit of like intelligence and wit to a lot of the visual gags and the staging and the and the personalities of the character here. So it's a great, it crosses like a great boundary here. Like so few films I feel that are intended for much younger kids can really cross over that border for older adults, and Shaun the Sheep kind of does that. Maybe not so much as the first Shaun the Sheep movie, but it's still there, and it's still something that I really appreciate. And the fact that Aardman is still doing just astounding animation like this is really just a testament to like the legacy that Nick Park has created here. So it's a very, very adorable film. It's kind of what I expected from Aardman. And it's a huge bounce back from Early Man, which I feel like Early Man, it was a decent animated film, but I feel like it really got lost a little bit more in its football gags, that it kind of lost sight of, I don't want to say like a grander appeal because it's all about football. But I think, within like, something as simple as Shaun the Sheep, it's hard to go wrong with this type of story. So yeah, absolutely adorable. I loved it. It's definitely one that, it's definitely a film that you can watch with younger kids and not just be, bored out of your skull or feel like you can't catch up with anything here. Adults will appreciate the very, very subtle gags that will kind of go over the heads of the kids, but kids can still appreciate in their own right. It's not like, like Animaniac style references where you pretty much have to know the reference to get the joke here. No. Kids will be able to digest it fairly well, and adults will love it as well. It's a great crossover. So, for Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon, 3.5 out of 5 stars.